RJ Baxter with realestatetalkdenver.com, and thank you for joining us today. We're here today with Sima Patel and Lisa Mitchell from WFG Title, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, title companies in the country. Is that right, Sima?
We're the sixth largest.
Sixth largest.
Yeah,
so
sixth largest, and a direct underwriter, which is really,
Okay.
I think, is really important to look for in a title company. And
For
fastest growing, though. And we are now
fastest growing.
in 48
Okay.
states now that we've entered Colorado.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Exciting.
Awesome. Well, Sima and Lisa are joining us today to talk a little bit more about what a title company does, why title companies are involved in real estate transactions in Colorado, because there's a lot of confusion about that, I think, sometimes with home buyers, especially on the first time people buy a house.
Mm-hmm.
They're wondering, what is this title company? Why do I have to have a title company?
Mm-hmm.
What do they do? How does the process work? So
Yeah.
Sima and Lisa are going to talk a little bit more about that. And Lisa's one of our closers. We use WFG quite a bit for refinance transactions, and they do an incredible job. Lisa's involved with those closings,
thank
and
you.
we love working with them. And they've been, both Sima and Lisa have been in the title business for a long time,
Yeah.
so are definite
Yeah.
experts in the field. And that's why I thought they would be great people to have on the podcast today to talk a little bit more about this. So, Lisa, tell us a little bit more about what is a title company? Why would we want to have a
Right.
title company involved?
So, title company, we actually work in two capacities. One is we research the title. We have a title commitment and a title plant that researches the title to see, what is outstanding, if there's any liens, encumbrances, encroachments, things along those lines. And we're going to provide an insurance policy to both the buyer and the lender for that property.
Okay.
But then the other aspect of it is the part that I do, which is I act as an escrow officer or settlement agent.
Mhm.
And by doing that, I make sure that we have met all the requirements necessary for closing. So I'm clearing those payoffs. We're calling on water and sewer, homeowners association dues. If there are judgments, liens, anything along those lines, we are working to clear those things. And then we are preparing the documents, and we are the company that you're actually going to come to conduct the closing and sign all of your final paperwork.
So it sounds like you do a lot behind the scenes.
There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
And it's important, because real estate transactions are such a complex, transaction. There's a lot going on. It's important that you do have a good team behind you. You want to make sure that you have a excellent lender, you have your real estate agent who is on top of everything, and you have a good escrow officer title company that's making sure that everything's staying on task and we're keeping things going.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the insurance policy, so that's title insurance you're talking about, right?
Title insurance, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is title insurance, and why would someone want title insurance?
Title insurance there's title insurance for both the owner of the property, the buyer, and then there's going to
Okay.
be title insurance for the lender. And
Okay.
so title insurance is going to protect the owner of the property, the buyer, from any unforeseen things that could come up. So if there was any judgments, bankruptcies that did not come up at that time, mechanics liens, the payoff that got missed. If there was undisclosed heirs on a property and somebody did have a right to the property, we will be covering and ensuring that you have property free and clear from any of those items.
Okay.
And then the lender wants to make sure that they, have that policy in place because they want their lien to be the priority lien on the transaction.
Right. Well, and in fact, the lender requires
It's a
title insurance,
requirement,
actually.
yes,
So,
yeah. Yeah.
but a lot of people wonder about that. They think, well, I have homeowners insurance, I don't need title insurance. But
Yeah, they're two things entirely. And
Yeah.
so we are insuring what happened in the past to the property. So from the date that you've closed backward. But other policies for your homeowner's insurance, your medical insurance, those things are going to protect you against future things. So we're not protecting against anything that could come up in the future. It's going to be anything that's already impacted that property. Yeah.
Okay, very important. And we've had people that have actually had claims where things came up that weren't anticipated maybe before closing.
Great.
So it was very valuable to have that policy because then they were able to combat those things like mechanics liens, for example.
Yeah. So it's something you don't think about until there is an issue, and then
Yeah.
you want it.
Totally, yeah.
Absolutely.
And if you're listening out there, thinking about buying a house, or you bought a house, don't panic, because it's, like 0.001% or something. It's just a couple times.
Right.
I've been doing this 17 years. I think only maybe 1 or 2 times this has happened.
Right.
But insurance is something you pay for, and you don't want to ever have to use it. But if you need to use it, it's good.
Well,
to
you
have.
certainly wouldn't want to take your, just somebody's word for it. So somebody who's going to sell you their home, you wouldn't just want to say, "Oh, we're good," right? You want to make sure that somebody else is out there doing the due diligence and doing the research. So
Yeah. Well, and it's not that you don't trust the seller. It's just that something
but-
they may not even anticipate
Right.
might come up.
Absolutely,
That happens a
So,
lot.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yep. So, okay. Well, that's interesting. So tell us a little bit more. People wonder how the process works from the title company's perspective. So what can home buyers expect as they're working through things? What does the title company do what are some of the steps the title company takes during the
Yeah,
process?
so there's a lot going on, and typically from the time you go under contract until closing date, it's about 6 weeks, that give or take. But lots going on at that time. So, we receive that contract and we begin that title search right away to see what's going to need to be done to get you to the closing table. And so, as I said, we're clearing requirements, making sure mortgage payoffs have been taken care of, calling the HOA. We are getting things over to the lender to make sure that they have what their requirements are.
Mm-hmm.
And there's contract deadlines going on during that time. So your agent's probably going to be having an inspection, scheduled for you, an appraisal
Mhm.
scheduled. So lots of things going on during that time. You will have your earnest money that's going to need to be dropped off at the title company. So a lot of contract deadlines going on. And so, there will be your agent and your lenders keeping on task, as well as us as escrow officers, but there's a lot going on during that time.
So you mentioned earnest money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that people wonder about is, this earnest money. What is earnest money?
Yeah, so that's your good faith deposit saying that you do intend to close that transaction. So, it's kind of your seller knowing that you're serious about closing on the transaction. It does apply towards your down payment, so it works into the settlement statement. So it's not just extra money that you're throwing in there, but it works into your final settlement statement. So we are holding those earnest money funds because we are a neutral person to the transaction. So we're kind of holding on to that for buyers, sellers, and agents and because we're the settlement agent, so we're going to be holding on to those the funds and the money and all of that.
So you hold it in escrow, that way the money's not in the hands of the real estate agent, for example, or the lender.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
So
we're really not advocating for the buyer or the seller, our agents. We are just a neutral settlement agent.
Yeah.
We hold it in our escrow account.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's where all the funds filter through, like when the closing actually happens, the wire from the lender, the money for your down payment and closing costs.
Yeah, absolutely. So the lender sends us their money, buyers are going to send us their money, and then we disperse all the funds on the transaction. So it's not coming directly from the seller or the buyer to the seller or the buyer. It's coming from the settlement agent and the title company.
Yeah, and that's to protect all the parties, so that then
It is.
someone doesn't tamper with the money or take it.
Yeah, and one of the things that is such a hot topic right now is wire fraud.
Yeah, I was
And
going to ask about that.
yeah,
actually.
so it's a really good thing to kind of mention at this point is that if you were to send a wire to your title company, you want to always make sure that you get that, you contact your escrow officer directly. Please do not ever accept a forwarded email from anybody saying, here's your wiring instructions, and call to confirm those, because there's been people that have lost significant amounts of money from the wire fraud that's been going on.
Well, and I've heard that people can get the information on your transaction before you actually close, and then they can pull your info and somehow get you fake wiring instructions that way.
It's gotten really sophisticated.
Yeah, and it looks like it's legitimate,
looks
but it's not.
Legitimate, yeah. And keep in mind your wiring instructions shouldn't change.
Yeah.
And if they do change if you get a notice saying that it's changed from its original, then contact your closer, Lisa.
Yeah.
It's very important.
Yeah, or the lender can also verify that it's legitimate.
Exactly.
So just be careful, because we've heard stories. Luckily, we haven't had it happen in our office, but we've heard people lose their entire down payment, then they can't even buy a house. They have to start over and kind of regroup.
Yeah.
Because once that money's wired, it's gone.
It
So,
is. Yeah.
very important.
And so we do want that transparency with our, buyers and sellers now so that they know who is their settlement agent, because it is an important thing that they know who they're working with and who they are sending their money to.
For sure.
Those things. Yeah.
For sure. So what can people expect then when they go to the actual closing? How does the process work once they get to the closing table?
So once you've gotten, there's been all these dates, these deadlines, and so much going on with all of that, and that can be intimidating, and there's a lot going on, but you finally get to the closing table, and I honestly feel like that's the fun part of the transaction, because everybody's kind of more relaxed. Maybe there's been a lot going on in the transaction and everything, but once you get to the closing table, I get to meet you face to face, and I'll offer you some refreshments, and we'll have lots of pens and a nice big stack of paper for you to sign. But you guys, and it can seem intimidating, but really all the hard work's been done at this point. So you can, we'll go through all of those papers. But a lot of these things you probably have already seen, buyers have seen when they did the initial loan application too.
Yeah, a lot of it mirrors what we first disclose when we start the transaction.
Right.
What the lender discloses.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I'm always happy to send buyers their copies of the closing documents ahead of time too. So if they want to see those, certainly ask for them, and you get those ahead of time so you can review them.
Yeah.
And have that comfort level.
And then this is something else I thought I'd mention too, is so people sign the paperwork and then the money's dispersed, and all that paperwork is stuff that we have on record that they can get access to. So homeowners will get a lot of offers after closing for, send us $75 and we'll send you a copy of your deed, things like that. And
Right. You shouldn't have to send anybody money for those things.
Yes.
Yeah. It's not fraudulent. It's a legitimate request when those things are mailed out, because they are offering that service. But we have those things on record. You have these things, lenders have the things on record.
Yes.
The real estate agents have these things on record. But really your title company has all of those recorded documents, and, as part of what you paid for your closing service, you get those documents with that. So you don't have to pay anything extra post-closing for that.
So one thing I wanted to touch on real quick, just being a lender, from the lender's perspective, is there's some timing things that are important on the transaction leading up to closing. And the most important one is a document called the closing disclosure. And what the closing disclosure is it's a document that details all the costs and fees, the bottom line that you have to bring to closing. And what's the rule on that, Lisa, as far as closing, when you need to receive that?
They need to receive that 3 business days prior to their actual closing date.
Right.
So, and that means that they have to acknowledge that they've received it too, as you know.
Yeah.
So, if they have not received that closing disclosure and it's not, been acknowledged, then the closing would get pushed out.
Yep.
Because it's a requirement now that they have that 3 days.
Yeah. So one important reason to have a lender that's on point on that and gets it out in time.
Right.
Because if the lender doesn't get it out in time, unfortunately, your closing will be delayed. So.
Right. So that's, like I said, you just want to make sure you have somebody in your corner who's staying on task with all of those things, and making sure that we're all turning in our paperwork on time. You know, title company and buyers, sellers, there's just so many, pieces to that we honestly have, I think, are really good at making those dates.
Yeah. So folks go to the closing table. The money's in the escrow account. They sign all the documents. They have their refreshments. And then they get the keys, right?
So Colorado is one of the few states that is a table funding state. And so what that means is that once everybody's signed all of their documents and all the monies have been receipted in, we are clear to fund and disperse, and the buyers can go and enjoy their new home. Depending upon when the contract says that they get to possess. But so they don't have to wait for anything else. We are done. Congratulations. Yeah.
And it's nice that way, because you can get that gratification of getting the keys right away. For example, we're licensed in California, and in California you sign, and then the next day they record the deed, and you get the keys the next day. So
we don't have to wait to record. We just, once everything's signed and the ink is dry and the money's in, we're good.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, thanks for sharing all that information, because it's really, it's kind of a, I don't want to say unknown, but not very well understood role in the real estate process, what the title company does. So
Yeah, I was just thinking about, when my kids were smaller, they would always ask me what I did, for a living, and trying to explain it to them.
Yeah.
Oftentimes they would get confused. So hopefully we were able to shed some light on this
Yeah.
a little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
totally,
exciting.
totally. But so important what you guys do.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
We sure appreciate having a solid partner in that
Yeah.
aspect. So, well, awesome. Well, thank you again. And we like to end every podcast episode with 3 questions to all of our guests. So I'll let both of you share.
You can start.
The first is, what is your favorite place to go to in Colorado?
Favorite place to go to in Colorado would be Telluride. It's my favorite mountain
yes.
town.
I love
We
Telluride
try to
too.
go every year.
Have you ever gone to Ouray during the summer?
I have not.
So they have a great 4th of July thing that they do with the fire engine with the hose. They have a fire
Yeah.
engine hose fight
Yeah.
that they do in the town, the middle of town there, and
How fun.
it's a really fun place to be at the 4th of July.
Oh,
So
have to make it out
I love
there.
that area too.
Put that on the list for next year.
Yeah, yeah. What about you, Lisa?
I was thinking about that. That's a really hard one because Colorado's got so many wonderful places. And so I think I'm going to be kind of lame and say probably my neighborhood. I live in the Lakewood Green Mountain area, and I love it out, here. So I think probably my neighborhood, coming home to that. But
Yeah.
there's lots of good places in Colorado. It's hard to pick one.
That's,
How about you?
That's for sure. Yeah, we're Winter Park people, so we
Oh.
love going up there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Both for skiing in the summer, for the mountain biking. But I'm from Iowa originally, so for me, I'm the same. It's just anywhere here is awesome.
Yeah,
Compared to, no offense to those of you in Iowa that are listening. but
Not at all.
Iowa's great in its own right. But I
But
love
yeah.
Colorado.
Colorado's got a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about a book that you would recommend, or a favorite book?
So it's been a while since I read it, but Happiness Advantage by Sean Archer.
I've heard of that one.
It's
Yeah.
a really good one if you just want a little pick me up, and just if you're in a little bit of a funk,
Yeah.
stick that if you have the ability to do audio in your car as you're driving around, which is what I do now. I originally read the book, but now it's just an audio in my car for when I need a little pickup.
Yeah. Nice.
Well, I just read probably about a month ago Wuthering Heights, and that was, it's a classic, and I kind of was expecting it maybe to not be as interesting as it was, but I loved it. So I would recommend that one.
Awesome. Awesome. And then here's the final question. If you could have any superpower, what would it be?
Oh, gosh, there's so many. But I don't know if this would be a superpower, but I would love to be able to travel back in time. And
Not forward?
well, actually, it could go both ways,
Okay.
backwards or forwards. I don't know. Sometimes, like when you're watching a movie or something, you just say, "Oh man, I wish I was around during that time." Just
Yeah. It'd be fun to be able to spy on, previous times and how it was, and
yeah,
cool.
that's what I want.
I would want to be able to teleport, so I would never be late to work.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And not have to deal with the traffic.
Yeah.
Because even though Colorado's wonderful, we do have a lot of traffic.
Yeah, right. That would be a good one. For
Sign me
sure.
up for that superpower, please.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, guys, for being on the show.
Thank you, RJ.
Again, that was just really great information for our audience and people thinking about buying a house, and maybe wondering about what a title company is, or what title insurance is, how this thing works from your perspective. So, thank you again.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah.
You're welcome. And once again, my name is RJ Baxter with realestatetalkdenver.com. Appreciate you guys listening in today, and you guys have a great rest of your day.